Okay. Well, again, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Marilyn Castriota, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager at Kestrel Land Trust, which is based in Amherst. The mission of Kestrel Land Trust, as many of you may know, is to conserve and care for forests, farms, and riverways in the Connecticut River Valley of Western Massachusetts, and doing so while nurturing an enduring love of the land. Tonight's event is the first in our Voices for the Land online speaker series to highlight diverse perspectives on the land, nature, and community. Paula Peters, an active citizen of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, will be presenting. Paula has been a vocal advocate for land and water concerns in Mashpee for many years and was among the founding board of directors for Native Land Conservancy. She currently serves as communications and program coordinator. Native Land Conservancy is an Indigenous-led land conservation organization based in Mashpee, which is located on Cape Cod. Weaving together natural and cultural preservation, their work builds a sense of place in their ancestral homelands, while providing space to honor the legacies and practices of Indigenous people, including their values, customs, traditions, and social structure. And now it is truly my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Paula Peters. Indigenous people have been living on and caring for land with intent for thousands of years. We can learn a lot from their long-standing and sophisticated understanding of people's relationship with their environment. So welcome, Paula, and thank you so much for sharing with us this evening.
Wanini Khan, good evening to you, and thank you, Marilyn. Thank you again, Marilyn, and thank you all for your patience. My name is Paula Peters, and I'm the Communications and Programs Coordinator for the Native Land Conservancy. I live on the land that my people have lived on for more than 12,000 years. It has been my inherited responsibility to protect and care for the land and live in harmony with all living beings. The earth, the mother of all life, sustains us physically, culturally, and spiritually. And when she is abused, we feel the pain of that abuse as if we are wounded ourselves. In response to this abuse, we have witnessed and the ongoing threat to the environment and the climate, the Native Land Conservancy was established as an Indigenous-led land conservation organization to rescue and restore land as a relative in need, to foster healthy natural environments, and to provide safe spaces for people to reconnect with nature. We like to take a look back, in this case, some 400 years, and I'd like to touch upon how we got where we are now. The top map shows the historical native land base, while the bottom map shows the colonized native land base as it looked in 2021. Colonization and the development of the nation that is the United States of America came at a great cost to Indigenous people who suffered from sickness, enslavement, wars, forced assimilation. And despite these oppressive conditions, many tribes continue to thrive and advocate for social, cultural, and environmental justice across Turtle Island. The people indigenous to these lands are born stewards of it, responsible for rescuing land wherever possible and restoring it to a condition that the ancestors could recognize. In the last decade, we have witnessed a trend, though, toward rematriation of land to Indigenous people that is very promising. In 2024, 3 significant events come to mind. In California, Governor Newsom returned 2,800 acres of ancestral land to the Shasta Indian Nation in an ongoing effort to right the historical wrongs against Indigenous people. And in Minnesota, the U.S. Department of Agriculture returned nearly 12,000 acres of land to the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, reversing a land seizure by the BIA in the 1940s. And right here in Massachusetts, the Nipmuc celebrated the return of more than 500 acres of forest lands in Sunderland in the shadow of Mount Toby. This map shows the linguistic geography of the traditional homelands of the Northeast tribal nations. Prior to colonization, there were many Eastern Woodlands tribes that thrived throughout New England. This map notes the Nipmuc, the Pequot, Mohegan, Narragansett, Abenaki, and Wampanoag. The NLC is based in Mashpee on Cape Cod. During colonial times, Mashpee was one of many villages that was established as a praying Indian town, and it is where many Wampanoag continue to thrive culturally. Today, Mashpee remains a vital tribal home for many Wampanoag. NLC was founded in 2012 by my cousin, Paula Peters, also called Nosapocket. She is a modern traditional Wampanoag elder and a member of the Bear Clan. Ramona was inspired by the lessons that she learned from her elders. The changes that they experienced in our homelands have been devastating to them and threaten our traditional way of life. All of us at NLC are connected to the land and our natural environment in a very spiritual way. As such, our worldview is different from other land conservation groups. We are inspired to rescue all land, and in particular, the homelands of our ancestors that are spiritual and emotional sanctuaries for Indigenous people. We are motivated by our Indigenous heritage that links us to the Earth Mother. We are not a political organization. No one on our board speaks on behalf of their particular tribe or clan. We only speak on behalf of the land we seek to rescue. Our board is intentionally tribally diverse. Currently, members of the board include Indigenous people from the Nipmuc, Narragansett, Mashpee Wampanoag, Herring Pond Wampanoag, and Aquinnah Wampanoag tribes. This diverse Indigenous leadership is what sets NLC apart from other land conservation groups. We are guided by our familiar relationship to the earth and all of our relations. Our respect for the land extends to all reaches of the four directions: the oceans, the rivers and lakes, the four-legged, the winged, and the finned. We are responsible for the interconnected survival of these beings in the circle of life. So our approach to land care is much more than maintenance. It is mutual sustenance. We sustain that which sustains us. NLC has a growing and robust staff that's led by our executive director, Deanna Ruiz, our land care manager, Earl Mills Jr., our operations facilitator, Jody Keegan. Our land and cultural knowledge caretaker is Asa Peters, and I serve as the communications and programs manager. Our mission is to preserve and restore healthy landscapes for all living things wherever possible. We draw upon our collective traditional knowledge as Indigenous people with generations of direct experience in the woodlands, coastlines, and waterways of our ancestral homelands. NLC protects land in many ways on a national scale. I guess I'm trying to show this with these dots, which may be hard to see, but I'll do the best I can. I'll start with the green on this map. The green dots represent regions where we have fee interest land holdings, where we hold title to these lands. And in Massachusetts, we hold title to more than 170 acres of land across 10 towns in 5 counties. So that's why we see this big green dot here. And on Madeline Island in Lake Superior, that's where this little green dot is. We are holding title to 8.5 acres of farmland that is operated by an Ojibwe women's collective. Okay, we have a smaller yellow dot here, and that represents some land and structures that come to us in the form of a bequeathment. And this includes 2 homesteads on Cape Cod that were donated by people who feel that the land needs to be rematriated to the indigenous people of that land. So we have these 2 places on Cape Cod. The orange dot represents places where we hold conservation restrictions, and we have more than 811 acres that is in our care, that is in conservation restrictions, including, and you'll notice that there's this orange dot down here over in Alabama, 776 acres of land in Alabama that is in the care of the Muskogee people, who I will talk a little bit more about later in this presentation. And lastly, the purple dot, that represents places where we have cultural respect easements. We have more than 460 acres in Dennis, that's actually held by the Dennis Conservation Land Trust on Cape Cod. And we have several other CREs, cultural respect easements, that are proposed in other areas. And I actually will have more to say about what exactly a CRE is later in this presentation. One way to protect land is through conservation restrictions or conservation easements. These are legally binding agreements wherein the landowner voluntarily gives up development rights for the sake of conservation. There are tax benefits to putting land into conservation, including a reduction possibly in your property taxes. In Massachusetts, the standard model now includes new language that designates indigenous cultural landscapes as a reason for protecting land. So that's similar to water protection or protecting it for endangered species. A conservation restriction now prompts the landowners to consider allowing indigenous cultural practices on their land. Examples of cultural practices might be ceremony or foraging. This new language may be the first of its kind in the United States. These inclusions provide a means for indigenous people to protect landscapes and features for their cultural significance and gain access through partnerships with landowners, municipalities, and conservation groups. This is an important and historic statement of recognition and a new level of sensitivity to the intrinsic values of the indigenous people of Massachusetts. The Native Land Conservancy is a qualified conservation restriction holder, which means we visit these lands annually and ensure the terms to protect the land are upheld. We hold conservation easements nationally as well, to include the land in Alabama. We are especially honored to have been asked by the Muskogee people of Igunyi-Fuleja to hold a conservation easement on 776 acres of woodlands and wildlife habitat. We established a native-to-native partnership with the people of Igunyi-Fuleja, which is an intentional eco-village community of indigenous Muskogee people who, after 180 years of having been forcibly removed from traditional homelands in what is commonly known as Alabama, have returned for the purpose of practicing linguistic, cultural, and ecological sustainability. The village is located in Coosa County, Alabama, where the people all practice language immersion, speaking only their original language, and center sustainability with the land, wildlife, and natural environment. It is land where they are reintroducing buffalo and sturgeon. When we first traveled to the village to meet the people and experience their land, we made a ceremonial offering to express our commitment to the land that they love. We are grateful for each of many gifts over the last decade since our first land donation in 2015. Last year, we were fortunate to receive a rare, unrestricted gift of land from two women in Leverett, Mass. The 53.7-acre parcel of mountainscape ascends Brushy Mountain and is dissected by Doolittle Brook, as well as several small spring-fed streams, abutting nearly 3,000 acres of conservation land with connecting trails. It is plentiful with wildlife from black bears to beavers. It has come to be called Nipisoniag, and that's a name that was offered by the neighboring Nipmuc people in honor of the waters that flow through the land. It was donated by Devorah Eisenstein and Laura Bond, seen here in this center photo with our founder, Paula Peters, and she's flanked by our Nipmuc neighbors, Andre Strong Bear Hart Gaines, who is also on our board of directors, and Pam Ellis, who is a former board of director. The women believed very strongly that the land that they held title to for many years was not truly theirs and belonged in the care of the original people. They were so committed to the purity of their gift that they declined a $75,000 tax credit that would have been required, or that would have required them to have restrictions on the use of the land. But Devorah said the land needs to go back, wants to go back, just as it is to the people of the land, with no restriction and no designation that me, as an outsider, have a right to determine what is done with it. Despite the lack of restrictions on NLC, we will be true to our mission and hold this land in conservation. Another great gift of land is this 32.4-acre parcel in Kingston, Mass. That was donated by the Muddy Pond Trust for the NLC to hold on behalf of the Wampanoag people. The Wampanoag Common Lands is a prime example of what land protection and preserving native lifeways looks like for the NLC. This land provides space for undisturbed cultural practice and allows tribal members to lead in its protection and restoration. The NLC is the caretaker of the land and responds to the needs of both the land and the people. We turn to the tribe, to the Wampanoag people, to make decisions about siting structures like the open air pavilion and the Witu, which is the traditional lodge that's on the property. The Wampanoag Common Lands is home to important plants and animals like the deer, the river otters, and it's also home to the globally rare boneset, and that's the white flower you see in the center picture. This land is known to have the healthiest population of this plant in the world. The NLC will make sure that this rare beauty is not only protected, but flourishes again in its home environment. And what do we mean by land rescue? Probably this is something that was defined best by this purchase that we were able to make in August of 2023. We were able to step in and save this critically important piece of land on the island of Martha's Vineyard that's overlooking the Gayhead Cliffs. This is particularly sacred land to the Aquinnah Wampanoag people. And when it went on the market, the Aquinnah tribal people were fearful that it would become further developed and that the access to the cliffs and this important piece of land would be lost to them forever. At the 11th hour, the NLC stepped in to purchase the 3.3-acre parcel, including the iconic Aquinnah Shop restaurant, buying time for the Aquinnah Land Initiative to fundraise the purchase for the cross. The Aquinnah Land Initiative is an emerging Aquinnah Wampanoag land trust that's modeled after the NLC with a mission to rescue Aquinnah ancestral homelands. The organization has earned its 501c3 and is poised to take title to this land over the cliffs as soon as their sufficient funds are raised. As Indigenous people, taking care of the land means more than pulling weeds. Everything is approached with a ceremonial practice to show our thanksgiving to the land and all that she gives us. We don't view land as a static exhibit. We are in active, reciprocal, and familial relationship to the land. We use the best practices in restoration science blended with traditional ecological knowledge to meet the land's needs. When we remove invasive species like knotweed and bittersweet, we return native species in their place, focusing on culturally significant plants that may be less accessible in other areas, such as bulrush. Some of the work we do after we have recovered land involves restoring land by cleaning up trash that has been carelessly discarded, and in some cases, small items like bottles and cans, and in other cases, large items like tires and mattresses and appliances. These things are not only out of place and unsightly in a natural setting, they can also contribute to spoiling the environment with toxins that pollute the soil and water and are dangerous to the fish and wildlife. We also devote a lot of time to removing invasive plant species that are not natural to the environment and can cause a decline in the plants and trees that naturally thrive in the region. Now I want to share with you a bit of a video that will teach you something about the cultural respect easement.
Wampanoag Aki means land. It is something that we are grateful for. In one of our prayers, we say, Manat ka nikonahachik, creator and ancestor, thank you for the land. Katapatanamu wachiwami Aki.
For me, all of Cape Cod has a connection to my ancestors. My folks have been here since this was under a mile of ice.
When you get to sit and you feel the wind and you feel the sun, it is very spiritual. You know that there's a bigger purpose than just for your enjoyment to look at it. What we put into the land, we get from the land. Our relationship is one of mutual respect.
You know, land has its own DNA, and the humans have contributed to that for many thousands of years, and we know a bit about it. The mission of the Native Land Conservancy is to rescue land spaces that have some cultural significance, watersheds, and special areas where different species need to be, almost like any other conservation group, but with the nature connection to those spaces, I guess.
Over the years, we've hosted walks with the Native Land Conservancy that really brought a new element of understanding how special our native landscapes are. And as we moved forward, we wanted to figure out a more formal way to acknowledge their organization and also help us educate people on Native people's involvement with the land. The Cultural Respect Agreement between the Dennis Conservation Trust and the Native Land Conservancy was signed December 19th, 2016 at the Sturgis Memorial Library in Barnstable Village, Massachusetts. The agreement formally acknowledges that there is culturally important areas of the 250 acres behind Chapin Beach. The agreement allows the Native Land Conservancy access to educate its membership and allow for cultural observations to be practiced there. So it was really wonderful to also mesh tradition and ceremony with the signing of the compact. It was so moving and so powerful to me to be a part of that.
This particular cultural respect agreement was very meaningful to me, and nationwide, we're getting a lot of attention about it. It's our responsibility to work together with all of the people who live on Cape Cod. I hope for the future that other conservancies come to us and want to partner with us and want to have those stories told on their conservation land.
This is the way, ideally, that people should function out of, trust and respect. Because it does take a lot of trust to be able to share the land.
Today, the NLC holds cultural respect easements on more than 460 acres, and we're working with new partners to develop more legal frameworks to guarantee and protect Indigenous cultural access to land. As my cousin Ramona says, it's the closest that you can get to land rematriation without actually transferring a deed. It is a way for landowners to demonstrate their respect for Indigenous culture and our unique relationship to our ancestral homelands. Regardless of who or what lives there, those lands remain part of our Indigenous legacy. Our caring doesn't go away when a new boundary is placed. We appreciate the existence of conservation groups, especially those that are open to sharing space with tribal people to carry on their traditional cultural practices. If you want to learn more about CREs or how to put a CRE on your land, please reach out to us. Every summer, the Native Land Conservancy hosts the Land of the First Light Fellows program. This 10-week fellowship invites Native American young adults ages 18 to 25 to explore what it could be like to have a career in land conservation and environmental protection in the ancestral homelands of the Wampanoag. Each fellow pursues an individually defined project on a topic related to land conservation with the support of an expert mentor from Mass Audubon. The paid fellowship offers each fellow a $7,500 stipend and additional support for things like travel and housing. If you happen to know someone who might be interested and could qualify to be a First Light Fellow, we'd love to hear from them. NLC is now accepting applications for the summer of 2025 fellowships. You can use this QR code or the link, and you can also visit our website at nativelandconservancy.org if you want to find this application. And as much as I am not a techie, I managed to make this QR code, and I'm actually quite proud of myself. Our fellows may only be with us for 10 weeks out of the summer, but we reap the benefits of their work long after they depart. Our 2022 fellows built back boxes that were installed by fellows in 2023 to help sustain the declining population of these species in two of our properties. One of our 2023 fellows then followed up by taking a census of what kinds of bats were living on the lands and installing a bioacoustic monitor to learn more about how the bats live and thrive. And so I'm going to actually try to play this, and let's see if, yep, I'm able to get it to go. These chirps that you're hearing are actually the sound of a bat as it is honing in on its prey. And this was actually demonstrated to us by the fellow. And as you can see, the chirps are getting closer and closer together. And as they get really close together, that's when there you go, right there. That's dinner. Okay. We do a lot of community engagement, and one of the ways that we engage with the public and specifically our membership is to have programs and events where we promote the best practices for living in balance with nature. We have nature walks, land care days, and recently we invited a Wampanoag scholar to come and speak about how tribal nations are leading the way in climate change resiliency. We also have partnered with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe to host an annual event that we call the Honor the Earth Fair. At the Honor the Earth Fair, last year we had more than 30 groups, including conservation organizations and tribal artisans that filled the gym, where we had some cultural performances and a cooking contest where the chefs presented dishes that were made exclusively with plant-based foods. And it was really a ton of fun. We had actually the winner of the contest was our very own Sherry Pocknett, who is a member of our tribal community who won a James Baird Award last year. So I guess it was no surprise that she came away with the first place in our Taste of the Earth contest. We keep our friends, members, and donors informed with quarterly newsletters, email updates, blogs, and social media, which I somehow managed to do that as well. I totally surprised myself. Now, though, for a bit of shameless promotion, currently, we are nominated for a Project for Awesome grant. And if you don't know what that is, you should probably look that up. But Project for Awesome is a viral video grant platform that's fueled by the voting public and in our social media audience. So our video was created by a local volunteer who can be found, and the video can be found by using the link that's on the screen. And you can also use this QR code. And while I made it, I'm very challenged to use it myself, but I understand that it works. And you can vote for us to be funded. And we're really hopeful about this because last year, each of the 30 winning organizations received more than $37,000. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe some of you will take down this link or use that QR code and vote for us because we need the votes. Other ways that you can get involved and help us, obviously you can donate. Donate what you can, whether it's land or funds or easements or your time. We have so many committed volunteers and they become fast friends with us and we are so happy to have them. You can learn about the places and the original people of the land where you live and work and visit. You can live lightly by taking only what you need from the earth and practice sustainability. You can be thankful, even if you don't have a cultural tradition around giving thanks, just be grateful. And share the planet with all of our relatives. We all have a responsibility to all living beings. Kutabatanimu. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Paula, for a truly informative and inspirational presentation. I
Thank you
learned
for
a lot. Yes. I hope you all also learned a lot, and we can now take questions. So feel free to raise your hand or write a question in the chat.
I see William Pulaski is waving, but I don't know if he's probably as tech challenged as I am.
I am. I'm surprised I haven't shut my audio or my video off, but I'm curious. about the map that you showed in the beginning of your presentation. So
Sure.
I have lived in the past, I spent 30 years in Winchester outside of Boston, which is Wampanoag, and am familiar with that area. Now I'm out in the Berkshires, and I'm currently living in the mountains of Lennox. And we're always told, almost all of our naming or signage is Stockbridge Munsee, the Stockbridge Munsee tribe. And I'm curious as to what you know about that relative to the map that showed this area being the Nipmuc tribe. Is that because of dating changes in the maps, or can you explain that a bit?
I'd have to go back and look at the map, but I think that it describes it points to Nipmuc territory being in Western Mass, but not so much into the Stockbridge Munsee. Let me see if I can look at that.
So
It does go over, yeah, well, one of the reasons why this map looks the way it does, am I sharing my screen again? No. Let me see if I can. I don't think I can. Anyway, one of the reasons the way it looks the way it does is because that map is particularly a linguistic, it identifies territories by the linguistic characteristics of the people who live there. So that's what I'm told. So it doesn't exactly, and it's extremely difficult anyway to put boundaries, which are not something that we traditionally held. Territories were pretty much defined by where your families and clans lived, and also by where you hunted and where you planted. And they could morph and change. So the idea of having boundary lines is something that's very colonial.
great, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Paula. Here's a question from Daniel. Daniel was wondering about the land back or reparation movement. Could you comment on that, Paula?
I think that there is a national movement. I mean, obviously there's a national movement called Land Back. We don't really operate under that, because as I said, we're not a political organization. So we base our, we certainly support the idea that land should be given back. But the land back movement is a far more political movement than what we do. We work with individuals and groups, and certainly seek donations from individuals and foundations, and in that way try to get land back. But we're not part of the political movement that is land back.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Paula. Mary Savage has a question. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you so much, Paula. I'm in so much awe of anybody who can do a QR code. I can't tell you. I had the good luck to run into some videos that were made of Ramona Peters a couple of months ago. And this is going to sound stupid, but I'm going to say it anyway. Even through the video, the power of her spirit just came kind of sailing into the room. And then to see all of this very spirited, practical, forward-going work has really been a shot in the arm. I'm wondering if how do you go about making an arrangement with places for cultural practice. Are you looking for places where those practices have actually been held or where they could be held or?
Sure, that's a really great question. You know, this region, excuse me, this is our ancestral homeland throughout the region. And we seek to have those relationships with the land wherever we can be welcomed back. So it might be, you know, someone's private land, it might be a conservation trust, it could be the land that's donated to us or land that belongs to an individual.
Mhm.
So there's no limit to where we would want to hold cultural respect easements.
And then do you then connect that land with local cultures? Like I no longer live in Worcester, but I grew up underneath Airport Hill, which was, you know, very traditionally a Nipmuc village.
Mhm.
So the airport is probably not going to give you a cultural easement, but say that it did. Would you then make a relationship with the Nipmuc people or just open it to cultural practice general?
You know, probably a little of both. But for instance, this land that we recently uh, were gifted in Leverett, which is in the territory of, or just bordering on the territory of where the Nipmuc people live. We are looking toward establishing a cultural respect easement there that would be for the Nipmuc people. So because that's bordering on the territory of the Nipmuc people.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for doing this.
Okay, Mickey, I see your hand raised, but I just want to ask a question from the chat here first. Diane is wondering, what do you think about markers and plaques that are settler related? What would you recommend one should do with them?
You know, each would have to be viewed on a case by case basis. I mean, we've come across many different markers and plaques that are some are insensitive to the indigenous people who are of that land. Some are just plain wrong. And we like to see those removed or corrected or desensitized in some way. And markers in general, I mean, do you mean like along, oh, I can't really ask that because this came from the chat, but
Or you could ask Paula, and then Diana, you could either answer in the chat or raise your hand.
sure, yeah. I mean, the other thing that I was going to mention is, you know, we do have markers along trails that are for guidance, which I think are really important. But we also have to be careful how we put markers on trails and what they say and where they lead you.
Diane clarified marker being a stone, Paula.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, some of them, you know, some stone markers are put there by colonists, and then there are stone markers that we have in some places. We just recently acquired some lands in New Salem that have some spectacular stone markers that are they've been identified with they have celestial markings on them. And we've had to be really careful with those. I'm not at liberty to say exactly where they are, but we did have a very special woman who protected those lands and then donated them to NLC. So we're continuing to protect those stone markers, and they were clearly put there by ancient tribes. They've been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Nikki, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. This has been a wonderful presentation. I was particularly excited to see that you were connected with Egan Ifulajig. I've been there 3 times and I'm a supporter of that community. And so I had no idea that there was that connection. So that was
Wow.
very exciting. And I've also been involved with Mount Grace Land Trust for many, many years. And I wonder, I've wanted them to make more of a connection with the Native communities. And so do you have a connection with them?
Yes, and it has to do with that land I was just talking about with the celestial stone markings. And so we've been working with them on that. Yes.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you, Mickey. Okay, Daniel said also, are you aware of any active conversations between Native Land Conservancy and groups on the Lower or Outer Cape? He'd love to participate and help.
We are part of the Cape Compact, which is a sort of an umbrella organization over all of the Cape conservations groups. And we do work closely with Upper Cape, Lower Cape, all over the Cape. Yeah, we work closely with all the other conservation groups.
Oh, good to know. Okay. Let's see. Somebody here said, we are so happy to learn more about what you are doing and eager to meet with you and learn more. We are a Pequot and youth co-led organization focused on caring for our ancestral waterways. Thank you, Maggie. Okay, Pamela has a question. Go ahead, Pamela.
I think she's muted.
Yep, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ramona, so much for the presentation. Really, really appreciate learning more. I used to work at Mount Grace and Mount Grace Land Trust, and I'm really curious if you've forged any relationships with entities such as like the North Quabbin Regional Landscape Partnership. It used to be based at Mount Grace, and really great, just all the people concerned about land conservation in the North Quabbin, or groups like the Mass Land Trust Coalition, which may be in a different form now, but just groups like that. I know they have a conference in March, and wondering if you presented or might think about doing that in the future, just to, because I just have always thought that a lot of the land trusts just really need to understand like what cultural resources may be on the land that they're stewarding, so that their stewards can be sensitive if they're planning any logging or other projects, especially with the native ceremonial stone structures. So anyways, just lots of questions, and I'm just so grateful for learning more. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Pamela. No, that's a good question. I would say that particular group, it doesn't ring a bell for me as someone that we're working with directly right now, but I am gonna go out on a limb and say that, that will be coming soon. With the growth that we are experiencing at Native Land Conservancy, we expect to be growing even more in the coming year with more staff, and with the territories that we are venturing into in Western Mass, particularly. I expect that we will forge new relationships with conservation groups, with individuals. Now might be a good time for me to mention that, excuse me, it's not on our calendar yet, But in May, we are going to be holding a couple of events in Western Mass, in Leverett in particular, at the property where that was donated to us on Brushy Mountain. We will be having on May the 16th a meet and greet at the Leverett Crafts and Arts Center, if you're familiar with that place. I haven't inked the contract yet, but that's only because it's just such a casual and fun relationship I've established with this community in Leverett. I can't wait to get out there. They're such fun people. I don't know if there's anybody else from Leverett who's on this webinar, but I'm loving the people of Leverett. I think that they're great community. I'm falling in love with Western Mass in general. So we're gonna have that meet and greet on the 16th. And then the following day, we have a land care event at the Nipisoniag, which is the land that was donated to us there on Brushy Mountain. So that would be a great time for some of you folks to come out and meet us, for us to meet you. We're very excited about that. It should be up on our calendar soon. I'm just waiting to get a few more other details in place, but we're really looking forward to that. We'll be coming out there, spending a couple of days and getting to know the folks in the western part of the state.
That's so exciting. And thank you so much. I'm so grateful for everything you're doing, and to see that you're succeeding so well. It just warms my heart.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Paula, when those events are on your calendar, we can also share the word through our e-news and
Great.
something on our website. So those in our circle will know about it and know that they're included.
Great. Yeah.
Sue Alexander said, "Hi Paula, I'm a member of the Leverett on Native Land Education and Advisory Group, and we look forward to meeting you on May 16th.
Yeah, great. They have already made friends. I don't know how that happens.
Okay, we still have time. We have Paula here. Just so everybody knows, I will be following up with an email to everybody who registered. I will include a link to this recording. It will be available sometime next week. And I will also, Paula, if you want to send any links or the QR code, I'd be happy in that follow-up email to include any information.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's all in one email. Folks are sharing other links, so I'd be happy to compile all this.
Kate has a question.
Okay, go right ahead. Go ahead, Kate.
Hi, thank you, Kestrel Land Trust for hosting us all, and for Paula coming. And this is a really good presentation, really, really good. Thank you so much. And oh, is it going to be? Can we share it with other people who weren't able to be here, or do you have to have registered?
Oh, for the event in Leverett?
No, to this video, because this video is so educational. I'd like to
Oh,
share.
yeah.
Yeah, if that's okay with you guys.
Once it's available, Kate, yes, and we share it, yes, you're welcome to share it with others. We want the word about this to be spread near and far.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see.
I see Jay has a question.
Okay, go ahead.
It's Margaret, not Jay. I'm intrigued by this connection you have with other parts of the country. So how did your connection with Alabama?
Yeah.
And
Well, the gentleman who leads that eco village actually, and his name is going to slip my mind, but he studied at Harvard for a time, and it is pretty familiar with people in this region, especially Native people in this region. And when they started looking for, they were purchasing this big piece of land. I mean, obviously, it's almost 800 acres. And they were able to get the land, I guess, at a special rate, but they were required to put it into conservation.
Mhm.
And they didn't want to just go to any, they could have gone to any group in Alabama, but they wanted to make sure that whoever was holding the conservation restriction was also an indigenous group.
Mm.
So they knew about Native Land Conservancy from just being here, and they actually asked us, and it's interesting because it is what caused NLC to actually change the charter of the organization, because we had originally not really thinking that broadly, established NLC to just take lands and conserve lands in Massachusetts.
Mm.
So we had to change the original bylaws so that we could do that. And it was pretty easily done, but it wasn't something that we had thought about before then. And now we have established this wonderful relationship with the people at Equinifalicia, and
Mm.
have to go down there every year and check out the lands and make sure that they're in good order. And we're happy to do it.
Mm.
How
Thank you.
wonderful. How wonderful that other folks in other states know about you in the Native Land Conservancy, Paula, and are reaching out, and it's going beyond the borders of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and similarly with the group in Wisconsin, they're a group of women farmers, and the land on Madeline Island, it's kind of similar to, they've described it as a kind of a similar environment as like Martha's Vineyard, where it's of course, they're ancestral homelands, but they've been populated by all of these wealthy landowners who have built, big, beautiful homes on this beautiful island in the middle of Lake Superior. So to protect and preserve this 8.5 acres was a really big deal. And we were happy to step in and assist with that. We actually just hold the conservation restriction, but did help in assisting to purchase that land. And ultimately, that group is trying to raise the funds so that they can own it outright themselves, similar to what's going on over on Martha's Vineyard, where we were able to step in and purchase that land before it went to a private developer. That was a huge deal for us. We were so happy that we were able to do that, and of course, the people of the Aquinnah tribe are very happy. But they're working really hard on establishing their own land trust over there, and we expect that at some point in the near future, they'll be able to purchase that outright for themselves.
Well, that's good news. You're really a model for other communities and states, Paula. Here's a question. Does the Massachusetts Commission on Indian Affairs help your efforts, and how do they do so?
The Commission on Indian Affairs helps all Indigenous people throughout the state. I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question. That's not something that they would necessarily do. I mean, I'm sure if they were aware of land that perhaps could be donated to us, I'm sure that they would let us know about it. I mean, there hasn't really been an opportunity for them to do anything from the Commission on Indian Affairs. They may have been involved in in getting that language into the conservation restriction language that that looks at having that kind of cultural easement on the lands if you have a conservation restriction. But I don't know. I've been with NLC for the last couple of years, and I know that happened before then. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was, some involvement, because Ramona Peters, who is my cousin, is also sister to Jim Peters, who is the executive director of the Commission on Indian Affairs. So we all kind of know each other.
That's good to know, all those relations, Paula.
Yeah.
Here's a question from Carol. Thank you so much for your presentation and fine work. Curious, is there any progress in changing the Massachusetts flag to a more inclusive design?
I believe that there are there is still a group that's working on that. But I don't know where that process is. I know that a couple of different groups have tried to address it. One of the challenges that we have as Indigenous people of Massachusetts is that we have limited human resources. There's only so many of us that can do so many things. And I know that a couple of people have really thrown their attention at that issue, and then they come up against stumbling blocks, whatever they are, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of praise here in the chat. Thank you so much for this presentation and for all that you are doing. Excellent presentation and conversation. So much gratitude for this presentation and all the great work that you have done and are doing. This is all going to you, Paula. Yeah, this presentation has been wonderful, very informative. Yeah, so many such comments.
Thank you.
Oh, Pamela is raising her hand. Pamela, do you have another question there?
I do. Paul, I'm just curious if there's any talk at the state level yet that you've heard word of looking to put out a grant program for native land protection. It would be so great to see if the state would do something like that.
Yeah, you were kind of breaking up, so I didn't fully understand the question.
Yep, just curious, Paula, if at the state level or even federal level, if you've seen any opportunities, for a specific grant program that could help to leverage land conservation for native purposes.
Yeah, I know that that's another one that I'd have to throw at Deanna, but I know that we do take advantage of state funding and grants that help us to make land purchases where we need to. For instance, there are state funds that it's either direct funds or well, it wouldn't be I think there are, yeah, it's funds that can help if you're buying a cranberry bog and it needs to be rewilded, that sort of thing. So there's state money for that kind of thing. And we take advantage of those kinds of opportunities whenever possible.
Yes, that totally makes sense. That's great. The other kind of question I have is about sort of almost like a loan fund. If you've been able to work with, like, are there any banks or entities, large foundations, or anybody that are willing to have like a revolving loan fund where they would have money that they would provide for a temporary land purchase, like the rescue benefit?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm gonna turn this over to Deanna, who's not here, but let you know that she is an absolute wizard, and able to get, we haven't had to work, with loans so much as we have, very, very generous foundations that have, helped us in establishing, an excellent, we have just recently, received, a very generous grant from the Doris Duke Foundation, and other donors who I cannot name because they prefer to remain anonymous. But it has enabled us to have a very generous endowment.
Fantastic. That is what I wanted to hear. I really am grateful that people are doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Good question, Pamela, and thanks for sharing that, Paula. Any other questions or comments for Paula? We still have time. I said earlier we're stopping at 7, but actually it's 7:30, so we still have time for any other thoughts or questions. Ah, Rachel. Go ahead, Rachel.
Hi, Paula. Nice to see you. And my question has to do with the First Light Fellowship. Is do you actively recruit for those positions as well, or do people find their way to you pretty easily?
Hey, hi, Rachel. How are you?
Nice to see you.
It's so nice to see you. It's nice to see an old friend. I've made a lot of new friends here, but Rachel and I are old friends. No, we are actively recruiting for that. Obviously, we're looking for Indigenous young adults, 18 to 25 years of age, and we send that recruitment out nationwide. But we welcome applications from folks from right down the street to folks from as far away as Hawaii. We had last year, was it the year before, we had a young man from Colorado came out. We had a young man that came all the way from California. He drove his car across the country to come and spend the summer with us. It's really been it's a great opportunity for a young person, but it's also a great opportunity for us because we get refreshed every time this cohort of young folks comes and works with us, and they really make us think.
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned earlier that about some of the more like national or political borders that are just imposed on the land. So, I mean, along those lines, do you ever accept fellows from outside of the US or?
Yeah. We also get fellows from the Yale Environmental School. And so that particular fellowship is open to folks that are not Indigenous. So we usually get 3 fellows that are Native and then 1 fellow who is not. But it's not a very large cohort. Hopefully, we can grow it and do more in the future. But right now, it's we have 4 fellows. The other hard part is actually being able to find places for them to stay on Cape Cod, because it's housing here is really, really difficult to find. And that's one of the reasons why we were so grateful to get the donated cottage, because that is where our fellows live. At least 2 of them will stay there throughout the summer. So it's kind of a challenge.
Paula, I'm curious, the fellows that you have, once their fellowship is complete, is it a growing cohort that stays in touch with one another? Is there communication that goes beyond?
Yeah, we have stayed in touch with them. They've stayed in touch with each other. It's really, it's again, it's growing our little family here. And in my newsletter, I've started to do a look back, or where are they now column on our different fellows, to just to see, catch up with them, to find out what they're doing. But yeah, we stay in touch with them. One of our fellows from 2023 actually landed a job in an environmental field here on the Cape, and she's moved back. She's from a tribe in Arizona, but she's now living on the Cape. So
Oh, it's wonderful.
yeah.
When did the fellowship start?
We had our first cohort of fellows in 2022, I think.
Okay.
It's only been going on for it might be 3 or 4 years.
Mhm. That's a wonderful program
It is.
for youth, making inroads to
Yeah.
this very important work. Kim said that she just tried to vote on Project Awesome, but could not find the voting link. So yes, Kim, in the follow-up email, I'll make sure that that information is included. Instructions is what
Huh.
she said about.
Yeah, I checked the links before I got on with you and they were working, so I don't know if I can put them up again. Let me see if
The link works. I'm just wondering, are we only allowed to vote between the 14th and the 16th?
no. You
Oh,
can
so
vote.
that's just okay, so that's another event that we saw. Okay.
Well, yeah, the live event is between the 14th and the 16th. They have live streaming or something. I don't know. I don't understand what all this stuff means. But you can start voting now. You can only vote one time. I'm not sure if it's one time per day because it let me vote again today. I thought I voted yesterday and then I got on today and I was able to vote again. So I think it's one time per day per device. So you can vote on your phone, you can vote on your computer, and then you can try it again tomorrow because it might work again. But it'll shut you down today. Like I voted on my computer today, and if I go on to the site again, it'll say that I voted. But that was a really nice thing that I would have known nothing about it. That was not something that we started ourselves. There was a young woman who came to one of our events and she asked if she could make the video for us and put it on the site. And essentially she did all the work for us and I just have to try to promote it to get people to vote for us. So it's kind of cool.
Okay, Joanna Rosen, thanks for clarifying. She said, look for the vote for charity button on the right. So if you're still on the Zoom here, Kim, that's what you would look for. Vote
Yeah.
for charity button on the right. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry if I missed anything in the chat. I've scrolled up and down. Oops, here's a new message. Let's see. Paula, thank you for the great presentation. Wishing you continued success. You're getting lots of praise and applause, Paula.
Oh, thank you. Well, I can't wait till I get out there in May and I'm hopefully going to meet a lot of these folks.
Yes, we'll look forward to you being here. As I
Okay.
mentioned to Paula when we were talking earlier, Leverett is within the service area of Kestrel Land Trust. And of course, Kestrel Land Trust has helped conserve many hundreds of acres on Brushy Mountain. So we're so happy that this is part of that area of Western Mass.
Yeah, we're neighbors for sure now.
Okay, well, just for those remaining on the Zoom meeting, as I mentioned at the beginning in the introduction, this is the first in our Voices for the Land online speaker series. So we'll have more coming up this year. We're hoping to do one per quarter. So Paula, thank you for leading us off here. We are just delighted and you have exceeded our expectations where this is an area of great importance. And we're all trying to learn as best we can in this great work of relating to the land, conserving the land, honoring all our relations having to do with the land. And so a deep bow of gratitude to you and the Native Land Conservancy.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thanks for your participation all. And again, I'll be sending out a follow-up email next week with all sorts of information in the recording.
Okay. Wanina Khan. Good night, everyone.